So shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Memory International Lecture Series. My name is Medin Shachar, and I am an educator and guide at the Ghetto Fighters House, and will be your host for today's program. With all their might, Landsberg after liberation, survival, culture, and the rebuilding of life. This is actually the second program in a two-part series, Landsberg, Rupture and Renewal, marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This two-part Talking Memory series traces the Jewish history of Landsberg from community to catastrophe and from displacement to renewal. Through microhistory, testimony, scholarship, archival memory, music, and personal reflection, the programs examine Jewish life under National Socialism and the aftermath of liberation, when survivors rebuilt communal, cultural, and political life in the Landsberg DP camp. By focusing on individual lives and local experiences, the series illuminates both the destruction of German Jewry and the enduring human capacity for agency, solidarity, and renewal. Together, the programs frame remembrance not only as commemoration of loss, but as an ethical act of witnessing, responsibility, and resistance in the present. Today's program is in partnership with Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung Israel, the City of Landsberg, Classrooms Without Borders, and the Rabin Chair Forum at George Washington University. And I want to welcome our global audience, including many children who were born in Landsberg, and a special welcome to all the survivors and their families that are with us today. We want to thank everyone for their support and interest in our programs. I would like to invite Yigal Cohen, CEO of the Ghetto Fighters House, to give opening remarks. Yigal?
Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you and to open the Talking Memory event marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year, we commemorate this day under the theme of human solidarity. In that spirit, our partnership with our friends in Germany, and especially with the city of Landsberg, stands as a powerful example of solidarity, friendship, and a deep human connection. Over the past 2.5 years, this relationship has grown stronger, more meaningful, and profoundly moving. Landsberg holds a unique place in our shared history. It was here that the DP camp was established and where young members of the Draw youth movement created a community they called the Ghetto Fighters. From this community emerged the foundations of Kibbutz Lochamei Ghetto and the Ghetto Fighters House Museum. Today, that history is not only remembered, it is given voice. We are honored that Hannah Rosenblum Ehrlichman, the daughter of Holocaust survivors who were themselves in the DP camp in Landsberg, will share her testimony with us. Her presence reminds us that memory is carried not only in archives and institutions, but also in lives, families, and personal stories passed from their generation to the next. The founders carried with them a commitment formed in Landsberg itself to building a just and modern society. They believed that remembrance must lead to responsibility. This belief reminds us the heart of our mission and continues to guide our work today. It is a great honor to welcome the Mayor of Landsberg, Doris Baumgartl. Thank you for your leadership and your important role in shaping and strengthening this partnership. When we speak of partnership, our colleagues at the Friedrich-Ebert Foundation represent model of long-standing cooperation and true friendship. Thank you, Dr. Raf Meltzer, Director of the Foundation, and Judith Stelmach, Program Director, for your continued commitment. We are deeply grateful to work alongside you. I also want to thank the City of Landsberg, Classroom Without Borders, and the Rabin Chair Forum for their long-standing support. I would also like to thank our friend Karla Schönebeck, who leads this connection with Landsberg with such dedication, and Medin Shachar for organizing today's special program. My thanks as well to my colleagues and partners in this event, Ronit Lusky and Noam Rachmilevich. Finally, thank you to our participants from around the world who have joined us today. I wish us all meaningful and inspiring gathering, one that honors the past while looking toward the future with hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Yigal. Thank you very much for your warm-hearted words. Really is this collaboration that started, in my mind, the idea to do this two-part program, and I'm so glad that we're here tonight together. And now I would like to invite Judith Stelmach, who will speak on behalf of the Friedrich-Ebert Foundation in Israel. Judith?
Hello, good evening, everybody. I am honored to welcome you at this special Talking Memory program commemorating International Holocaust Remembrance Day 2026. As every year, we have the pleasure to collaborate with the Ghetto Fighters House Museum and turn the commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day into an opportunity for meaningful and interesting discourse that connects between the past and the present and reflects on universal values. This year, we have chosen to direct our spotlight on the ability of human beings to rise from the deepest despair and suffering and build a future of dignity, solidarity, and hope. There is no comparison between the Holocaust and the horrific events of October 7th and the following 2 years of war that we have experienced here in Israel. But there is a common denominator with regards to the preconditions that are necessary in order to overcome deeply traumatic events. The human spirit and solidarity among the residents of Landsberg DP camp were the foundation for creating a flourishing community in the camp after the Holocaust and until the closure of the camp in 1950. The same human spirit and solidarity among Israelis helped to cope with the disaster of October 7th, the ongoing war, and the unbearable hostage situation for 2 years. Diving into the story of the Landsberg DP camp is therefore a journey into the past and the Jewish history in post-war Germany, but at the same time it can, and I hope it will, serve as a source of inspiration and hope for all of us. I would like to thank all our speakers tonight, Karla Schönebeck, Ronit Lusky, Dr. Hannah Rosenbaum, and Noam Rachmilevich, and extend my deep gratitude to our partners at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum, especially to you, Meidin, and to you, Yigal, for our long-lasting and fruitful collaboration. I wish us an interesting and inspiring evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judith. Yes, I think that our collaboration is on its 5th year, and it has been an honor to work with you and to create these programs together. It's always been in cooperation. And now it is my honor to invite the mayor of Landsberg am Lech, Doris Baumgartl, who has sent a very inspirational message marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. As mayor of the city of Landsberg, it is a special honor for me to have been invited to this important meeting by the Ghetto Fighters House Museum, its director and team, and all partners and participants. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. In 2 days, on January 27th, 2026, we will commemorate the victims of National Socialism worldwide. We commemorate the people who did not survive by the tyranny of the Nazis, billions of people who did not fit into the ideological image of this inhuman regime and were therefore persecuted, tortured, and murdered. I will do so in the traditional manner with my colleague from Kaufering, Mayor Thomas Salzberger. The seat of our commemoration is the Death March Memorial on Neue Bergstraße, were 81 years ago, mainly Jews from Kaufering Landsberg concentration camp satellite camps, were driven into an uncertain future. Today, we remember the people who survived the Holocaust and who, despite or perhaps because of this heavy burden, set out to lead new, self-determined lives. You already learned about the history of Landsberg and its Jewish citizens in the first part. Landsberg was designated a city of Jews in 1938. It is where the Hitler memorial marches from the Nazi Party rallies in Nuremberg ended. Hitler's former prison cell, where he wrote the first part of Mein Kampf after the beer hall putsch, became a place of pilgrimage for National Socialists from all over the world. There were 11 satellite camps of the Dachau concentration camp in Landsberg. And after liberation, at the end of April 1945, one of the largest DP camps. Not to mention that the Americans converted the former Hitler prison into the war criminal prison number 1, could also say that Landsberg shows the path from the beginning of National Socialism and its consequences to the end. In 2024, as mayor of the city of Landsberg, I signed a cooperation agreement with our friend Yigal Cohen. It covers knowledge transfer, joint historical research, and use exchange. The historical background to this cooperation was the founding of the Lochamei Hagetaot kibbutz on the edge of the Landsberg DP camp, where from the summer of 1945 onwards, young people prepared for a new future in Eretz Israel after the Holocaust. This spirit of humanity, dignity, and hope has underpinned our wonderful, unique relationship from the very beginning. In 2025, we realized the Liberation Concert Project is the first time under the motto, Youth Meets History, with young people, with musicians from Israel and Landsberg. Before the magnificent concert, which commemorated the liberation more than 80 years ago, and an orchestra of Holocaust survivors, there were joint workshops, excursions, and the experience of living with a German host family. Another highlight was the Liberation Concert exhibition. It was created by journalist and project initiator Karla Schönebeck and was expanded in 2025 by Liat Margalit and Noam Rachmilovic from the Ghetto Fighters House to include new essential aspects. Let me give you an example. Survivors have put forward the theory that the existence of the State of Israel was anticipated in Landsberg. This theory was long doubted. However, the diary's entries of a former concentration camp prisoner from Kaufering, the intellectual Israel Kaplan from Lech, prove us wrong. His diaries about his time as a resident of the Landsberg DP camp are now in the archives of the Ghetto Fighters House. Thank you for your attention. From Landsberg, I wish you an informative and inspiring meeting, which has been organized with great dedication by Madin Shahar. Thank you very much.
Okay, and now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Karla Schönebeck. a journalist, author, and initiator of the Liberation Concert Project, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the moving introductory remarks. We have just heard that the death march had taken place in the Neue Bergstraße. Maybe we could show a picture of this death march. Yeah, here you see it. After the death marches and after liberation from the Nazi regime of terror, Germany and Europe lay in ruins. Old orders no longer applied, but new ones had not yet been established. Unlike other cities such as Munich or Augsburg, Landsberg had been spared from bombing raids. Jewish organizations were not yet in sight. The streets were in utter chaos, with Nazis on the run and others just wanting to get home, not knowing if they still had one. Amidst this confusion, the survivors of the Shoah found themselves without money, without papers, emaciated to the bone in a foreign country, the country of the perpetrators. The first Jewish DP camp was quickly established in Feldafing on Lake Starnberg. The situation was different in Landsberg, 60 kilometers away from our location we are talking about. And in Landsberg, former couples, prisoner functionaries have mingled with the survivors at the beginning of May 1945. The former Sabok Kaserne, we are going to see in the next picture. The former Sabok Kaserne, you see it here, had been converted into a DP camp by the Americans. Originally, it had been built for around 1,600 German soldiers, but now up to 6,000 people to live there at peak times to live. The living conditions were cramped, the hygienic conditions horrible. And at the beginning, there were no brooms or toilet papers. Hans Pfannenstiel, the mayor of Landsberg, appointed by the Americans, not only had to provide food for his own population, but also took care for feeding the DPs, sometimes in very unconventional ways. The military governor responsible of Bavaria, General George Patton, a proven anti-Semite, would have preferred to put all Jews back in concentration camps. Instead, barbed wire fences were erected around the DP camps, and the entrances and exits were strictly controlled. DPs from the Soviet Union were forcibly repatriated, while Western European survivors generally could return home. The Sisters of the Future Literature Nobel Prize winner Elie Wiesel, former Kaufering prisoners Bea and Hilda Wiesel went to France, while German survivors returned to their hometowns and thus also to their Jewish communities, which soon revived. What remained were the Eastern European Jews. Some of them had made their way home, such as the former Kaufering prisoner, 17-year-old Abba Naor. Maybe we could show the next picture. On their way to Kovno in Lithuania, he and his father had met the legendary fighter from the Warsaw Ghetto, Itzhak Zuckerman, in Bratislava. Zuckerman advised them to return. Lithuanians were now living in their homes, the Soviets had taken power, and Jews were once again persecuted. Abba Naor's name in Lithuania, lost his mother and two brothers in the Holocaust. He returned back to Landsberg, where some of his friends from the Kovno ghetto and his cousin David had ended up in the DP camp. You see Abanauer in the second row in the middle. The Lithuanians experienced with resistance in ghetto and concentration camps had taken the lead in the Landsberg DP camp. Unlike the Poles, they were a small minority, but they included leading intellectuals such as Dr. Samuel Bringhaus, a lawyer and philosopher from Memel, who had studied in Germany, Italy, France, and Switzerland. Israel Kaplan, a highly esteemed historian and author and engineer, Jakob Olszewski, also came from Lithuania. After American officer Major Irving Hammond took over the management of the camp in September 1945, conditions improved significantly. Although the Poles wanted their own Polish DP camp, the wish remained unfulfilled. However, Hammond very quickly enabled Jewish self-administration of the DP camp with its own jurisdiction, DP police schools. We may show the next picture, maybe. Kindergartens, cinemas, cultural events. You can go on with the next pictures, please. Yeah. Sports club, workshops, training facilities, a kosher restaurant, and a yeshiva. Maybe you can show the next 2 or 3 pictures. Yes, thank you. The Landsberg camp had also own newspaper, the Lagerzeitung, published missing persons notices, informations about events, and articles on world politics. When David Ben-Gurion visited the Landsberg DP camp on October 21st, 1945, he was presented with a model camp. Ben-Gurion was welcomed like a god by the residents, the Pinteler Yidden, normal, simple Jews. Samuel Gringaus had since been elected president of the DP camp, supported by the American military rabbi Abraham Klausner, whom they later referred to as one of their own. Gringos did not belong to the presumed 90% that an American observer claimed to have identified during her visit to the Landsberg DP camp in September 1945. He described the DPs as antisocial and neurotic. These negative assessments were made not only by American workers, but also by some Jewish observers. For example, doubts were raised as to how a survivor owed his life to chance and whether cooperation with the Nazis must have been involved. The historian and representative of the American Joint Distribution Committee, Koppel Pinson, himself a Jew, also showed little understanding. Quote, DPs are preoccupied with the past to an extent that borders on morbidity. Would you please be so kind showing the next picture? Yeah, you see how life began in the DP camp. The relationship with the American was and remained ambivalent. Next pictures, please. And the next. Stop, yeah. American press officer Robert Hilliard, a liberal Jew from New York, witnessed the liberation concert on May 27, 1945, while searching for a story for the army newspaper Second Wing Eagle. 8 surviving Lithuanian musicians, survivors from the Kaufering concentration camp, had performed in front of 400 Jewish patients at the Jewish DP hospital in St. Ottilia. Please show the next picture. Yeah. This picture shows the cover of my book, but the picture itself was made 1 year after the liberation, showing the musicians in new uniforms tailored for them at the Landsberg DP camp. They proudly used them to express their own never again. Back to Bob Pilliard. He was impressed by the partisan and ghetto songs that reminded the survivors of their old homeland, while others, such as Carter Pinson, a bit later could not understand why they still clung to the past. He showed little understanding for the fact that this extraordinary orchestra, with its displaced music for displaced persons, inspired thousands of survivors over the coming years, and that their repertoire contributed to strengthen spiritual resistance, not only in Bavaria, but also in Baden-Württemberg and Hessen. At the beginning of August 1945, the orchestra had moved from Landsberg from St. Ottilien to the Landsberg DP camp. Landsberg had become a kind of hotspot for Eastern European survivors of the Holocaust. Back to the visit of Ben Gurion in Landsberg DP camp, Abraham Klausner. Please show the next picture. Yes, here you see on the left Abraham Klausner, then Major Irving Haymond, and David Ben Gurion. And they have been well prepared for this visit. And Israel Kaplan, not on the picture, unfortunately not, had prepared well for his speech on behalf of the Sherita Plita, the rescue remnant. Among other things, he explained to Ben Gurion, here in Landsberg, in the mountains of Upper Bavaria, far away from the metropolis, for instance, Munich, and without stable connections to the outside world, path to cultural and social life has been paved, especially in Jewish life. The immigrants from small, remote provincial towns, I will not name every village, but a lot of them in Eastern Europe, became bearers of the Jewish language and culture. Kaplan continued, when you talk to a young Jew about his future studies, it means talking to him about a trip to Landsberg. If a Jew wants to lead Jewish life, if someone wants to live among his people, then Landsberg again. Many Jews here come from distant countries and cities who seek advice to find a document or a solution for their problems. Landsberg is in a frenzy of grassroots Jewish activity. The Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Vocational Training are based in Landsberg, but their influence extends far beyond that. They have established a network of kibbutzim and various technical and economic sources in Bavaria, and their influence extends beyond that. Would you please show the next picture? Yeah. Other activities also support the thesis Doris Baumgartl had already mentioned, that Israel as a state was anticipated in the Landsberg DP camp. Some DPs had secretly armed themselves and formed a small army which they wanted to continue fighting in Israel. Members of the Haganah operated in the basement of the Kibbutz Lochamei Hagetarot that had been founded in summer 1945 too. Keyword Israel and Zionism. Robert Pinson accused the residents of suffering from Palestinian centrism. The majority did indeed want to immigrate to Palestine. Their great goal was to live freely and in self-determination in Eretz Israel. That is why Ben-Gurion had rejected General Eisenhower's proposal to turn part of Bavaria to a small Jewish state of their own. I have already mentioned the idea of Sheri Tapleta, whether consciously or unconsciously, many DPs were imbued with the spirit of this humanistic movement, which was developed largely in Landsberg, the philosophy of the saved, of the rescued remnant. The Sheri Tapleta was based on the idea of Tikkun Olam, the restoration of the world, the healing of the world. According to Abraham Peck, an American historian born in Landsberg, DP camp, it was a long life requirement for the survivors never to forget the suffering they had endured. Please show the next picture. Here are the lists of the members of the Kibbutz Lochamei HaGeta Art, for instance. Then the next picture, please. Thank you. For example, DPs saw marriage and having children as their personal healing. That time, the Landsberg DP camp had the highest Jewish birth rate in the world. If they couldn't immigrate due to restrictive immigration policies around the world, then they at least wanted to have their own families. In the beginning, as Joe Bodetsky, for instance, was born in Landsberg, he reported that there was only one wedding dress which the woman borrowed from each other for weddings. At the same time, the many births of Jewish babies were also a message to former Nazis. We'll show the next picture. Here we are. The survivors in the Landsberg DP camp settled their score with Hitler in their own way by driving him through the streets of the DP camp, hanging from the gallows. And the Landsbergers, as other Germans, they were not only preoccupied with themselves, they wanted nothing to do with the Jews. The reverse was also true. One of the few exceptions was administrative matters and black market transactions. In addition, some Jews lived outside the DP camp in the houses and apartments confiscated by the Americans. One more thing. At the end of 1945, the Americans had already converted Hitler's former prison into war criminal prison number 1. His former prison now housed the Nazi and war criminals convicted in the Nuremberg trials, in the so-called follow-up trials, including prominent figures such as the industrial tycoon Alfred Krupp von Bohlen-Talbach. Now the residents of the nearby DP camp also got a taste of how people were standing up for the convicted Nazis, the murderers of their families and friends. The Germans demanded their amnesty. Around the same time that the State of Israel was proclaimed on May 14, 1948, revisionist forces secured the suspension of the executions. One shouldn't forget that they had been supported from outside, for instance, by Joe McCarthy. It's another story that I can only briefly touch on today. 4 days before the proclamation of the State of Israel, the DP musicians gave one of their last concerts. None other than Leonard Bernstein conducted the concert on May 10th, 1948, in the morning at the DP camp in Felderfing and in the evening in Landsberg. Like many other survivors, they then prepared for the departure. Here's a picture, the next one, of its program from this concert. And at that time, the orchestra performed in the name of represents Orchestra Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung Israel. And please, the next picture. Yes. this is the farewell dinner, one of the last meetings of the DP orchestra, because after the proclamation of Israel, people who had been members of the DP camps, they tried to go to Israel, to the United States, wherever. And with these people, also their stories lost, and we try to bring them now together. At the end of October 1950, Landsberg DP camp, one of around 200 camps in the American zone, was closed. Around 23,000 Jews had passed through Landsberg, 23,000, for a total of around 200,000 Jews DPs in Bavaria. Even though all this took place in post-war Germany, I would like to remind that it were Jews from the Baltic states, Poland, Hungary, or Romania, who wrote this often forgotten chapter of history. With a few exceptions, these people, with their cultural roots, their civic engagement, and their great religious tradition, remained strangers to German Jews. Allow me to conclude with a look at more recent history. In summer of 2000, Theodor Komet, Honorary Deputy Executive Vice President of the Joint in Washington, opened a conference dealing with the Jewish DP camps in post-war Germany. Komet came to the conclusion that the Holocaust should not be separated from the post-Holocaust period. The appeal of never again as a consequence of the Holocaust must be taken further, he mentioned. The spiritual energy and moral courage of the DPs to revive and renew Jewish life should be reinforced by forever again, Komet literally demanded. To achieve this goal, we must give recognition and honor of the survivors who have rebuilt their lives. They are our real heroes. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you so much, Karla, for your presentation. Every time we talk about the DP camp in Landsberg, and we know the history of the German Jews from the last program and what happened to the 6 families that lived in Landsberg before the outbreak of World War II, it's just amazing to see, like the title of our series, With All Their Might, to be able to gather the strength. And like you said, I absolutely agree with you that the post-Holocaust period has got to be a part of Holocaust history. I think that I've learned this over the last few months working with you and the Ghetto Fighters House staff, the cooperation between the museum and Landsberg. These are very important things that we need to do to help remember, to commemorate, and appreciate what the survivors did. So thank you again for your inspirational look at what happened in the DP camps in Landsberg. And with that, I would like to present our next speaker, Ronit Lusky, who is the Director of External Relations at the Ghetto Fighters House, and she will be sharing moving moments from the Ghetto Fighters House delegation to Landsberg am Lech for the Liberation Concert. Ronit?
Okay, thank you, Medine. Thank you, Karla. While the presentation will be uploaded, I will say that Karla's research actually led her to us, luckily, and she gave us an amazing opportunity to fulfill our goal, which is, we have many ways of phrasing our goals. One of them is to translate memory into meaningful contemporary engagement. And in this case, through a project that Karla initiated called Youth Meets History, and this year added 80 years to the Liberation Concert. So I had the pleasure, together with my colleagues and with our dear friend Hannah Rosenbaum, which we'll hear next, to attend the concert. And I'll say a few words about the project and how we experienced it. So you all heard, and we will hear some more from Noam about how our history, the museum's story, is deeply intertwined with that of Landsberg, and about the historic Liberation Concert that took place in 1945 by Holocaust survivors, and also how in 1948 Leonard Bernstein joined them for 2 concerts in Landsberg and in Feldafing. I read in the notes earlier that one of the participants' family was at that camp. And I'll just mention that among the works that Bernstein conducted was Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. And it's a piece that Bernstein described as offering him healing during times of personal hardship. So these 2 concerts are the inspiration. And the educational project tries for a few years to renew and reinterpret the legacy of those musicians. In the next slide, we will see that this year, Israeli musicians were invited for the first time to join German musicians to perform together with an orchestra and a choir. We can see here the leader on the left-hand side, Menachem Grodzinski, and the team. And on the right-hand side, we see our Noam, who joined and will share his presentation soon. So the Israeli musicians and German musicians worked separately for a few months, exploring different themes of displacement, of belonging, identity, resilience, hope, and each group developed their own musical interpretations. And when they came together on the next slide for a week, their days were filled with rehearsals until very late at night, with meaningful conversations, with visits to heritage sites. They heard a testimony by Hannah, all these grounding their preparation with the physical and spiritual landscape of memory. You can imagine the friendship and bonds that were created during such a shared experience. The next slide shows us I think Karla showed one of them, the 2 invitations of those concerts. There was more concerts in between the one of 1945 and the one of 1948. I'm just showing these 2 here. So what the musicians did is, on one hand, to draw inspiration, to draw on the historical concert programs that you can see here on the left side, 1945, right side, Leonard Bernstein, in big letters, 1948. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, they developed new contemporary forms of musical interpretations. The concert that I attended began with Kol Nidrei, which was also performed in 1945. It was followed by a theatrical play, Yiddish songs, a piece from Bernstein's West Side Story, and 3 additional pieces that I want to mention. There are 2 arrows, which I will, the lower arrow actually shows Kol Nidrei, and the upper arrow shows what I will refer to soon. So 3 additional pieces was, for example, a song called Secret for the Mad, a song about finding light in a dark time, contemporary song, which they decided fits this occasion and decided to perform. Some of the lyrics says, "I promise you it will all make sense again. There's nothing to do right now but try. There are 100 people who will listen to you cry. I still hear the choir sing, it will all make sense again." Another piece was Hope Lingers On. We can see it on the next slide, really 20 seconds. When love is gone, when peace is gone, when honor is gone. Yeah, just a minute. When love, when peace, when honor is gone. Okay, so when love, when peace, when honor, when justice, all gone, I will not hate and I will not fear. In our darkest hour, hope lingers here. That's what we just heard. On the next slide, I want to show you the Israeli big band ensemble, a photo and a short piece on the next slide. And this is Menachem leading them, conducting. Okay, we will stop here. The concert actually concluded with a joint. So we saw now two pieces where the German musicians performed and the Israeli did the same, but they also joined forces for several pieces. And the concert concluded with a joint version of a song called Habaita, Homeward. So this is an Israeli song from 1983, which became the unofficial anthem for the release of hostages that were taken by Hamas on October 7th. And it signifies a prayer for their return, come back home, homeward. It was sung in protest. It was posted in social media and in a major homeland concert with 1,000 musicians in Caesarea in Israel. And this song also connects to the historical concert because in 1945, on the next slide, we will see, actually on the next slide, we will see the words, yes, this one. So in 1945, this song was sung. Hannah is going to talk about it in a minute. It says, so she knows how to say it in Yiddish. I'll just read it in English. I long for my home. And this song was written in the Vilna ghetto by Leib Rosenthal. You can see here the meaning and the wish to go home, homeward. And therefore, the decision to perform Habaita with a contemporary context and with a connection to this song from 1945 was very meaningful. And this is what we're going to watch now quickly. So Habaita, I will actually post on the chat the lyrics. Some of them you can see here in front of you. And we will see it being performed at the Landsberg Municipal Theater. So during the song, during the performance, Hatikva was performed as well. I think most of the eyes were filled with tears. We, the Israelis, were very, very emotional about hearing the song Habayta with the connection to our own experiences and the experiences of displaced persons at that historical moment. And I think it shows powerfully how music can bridge past and present, and how it can transform displacement into community and loss into life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronit, for sharing with us the experiences of this delegation. Again, I think what's most important is the younger generation and how music can be a way to bridge between generations and between different countries and cultures. And as you can see, while I'm talking, there are hearts going up in the sky, thanking you for your presentation. I want to remind you that you can post your questions in the chat box, and there are already a few questions. Karla, if you're taking a look, there are a few questions about information about the DP camps. And with that, I want to move on to our next speaker, very special speaker today. I'm very emotional. Our next speaker is Dr. Hannah Rosenbaum-Ehrlichman, and she is the daughter of Holocaust survivors Fela Zindov and Shlomo Rosenbaum, who were married in the Landsberg DP camp on March 27, 1947. And she will share her personal connection through her parents' story. She will reflect on survival, continuity, and the pride of the second generation. And with that, Hannah, the floor is yours.
I'm very excited, especially after listening again to the song Habayta, and which reminded me also about the Hatikva that we heard in Landsberg in a short several weeks ago, which was very moving for me. And I'm very thankful for having to be enabled to share with you part of the history of my parents. So I would like the next slide, please. So I'm second generation to my parents, Fela or Tzipora in Hebrew, Zindov, and my father, Shlomo Rosenbaum. Both of them survived the Holocaust, and you can see here a picture from their wedding, while they are holding pictures of their parents. And my mother had a brother, so she's holding in her hands only the pictures. Nobody from her close family could attend the wedding because they were murdered in Auschwitz. And you see the stamp, which says in Hebrew, Zachor. So this is our task, to tell their story and to remember. Zachor means to remember. This stamp is very precious to me because it was designed by a very close friend of my mother from her hometown in Poland. Next. So my mother was born in December 1924 in Benjin. In Germany, it's Landsberg. You know, the Nazis, when they came into the towns, they gave the towns new, and also the streets, new names. So she was from Benjin, and my father was born at the same year in a very close town near Benjin by the name of Dambrova Gurnicha. Those sites, those cities are in Silesia. They were very close to Auschwitz or to Auschwitz later. It was like 40 kilometers away from Auschwitz. This picture that I'm showing you here is when my parents met in Landsberg am Lech in August 1945. It means only 4 months after the liberation. You can see here, my mother has like a slight smile on her face, and my father, he doesn't smile. So you can see here part of what they went through on their faces, the sorrow. Next, please. I want to give you a little bit about the background of my parents. My mother was 15 years old when the Nazi invaded the town of Landsberg. She was a student in a private high school, a Jewish private high school. So she studied Hebrew at school, and in their home, they spoke also German. So she's coming from a very well-to-do family, and she got from her parents a very good education, which was interrupted when she was 15 years old. Next. During the ghetto, my mother worked in an orphanage. You see my mother in the middle and all the children around her. And there is another guide at the right side of the picture, and you will see her in another picture as well. I found this picture in the Ghetto Fighters House archive. And I think that this picture shows how the life in the ghetto continued while the Nazi were ruling in the town, destroying the life. They had to be in a certain district in the town, several families in the same apartment, and the orphanage, you see, was very important to them to bring a little bit of a smile to those children, and you can see that some of them are smiling. Most of them have like white bags on their neck. I think this is to prove and maybe to identify the children with the names or something from their families. Next. In the ghetto, the youth were very active regarding several youth movements. My mother took part of the activities from the organization Gordonia. And you see here that what they did in the farm. They built a new farm outside the ghetto, and in the farm they had activities like you see here in the lower left. They were dancing, they were singing Israeli songs, they were planning how to escape from the ghetto and from Poland. They knew already what is the future that the future is very dangerous for them, and there is no way maybe to escape. So they had some plans, and also one of several youth movements also planned how to rebel. And you know that to Benjamin Mordechai Anilevich from Warsaw came. He taught them how to smuggle weapons and how to plan a rebel in the ghetto. And it happened. So my mother was quite a short time in this activity in the farm. Next, please. And you see here another picture of the farm. They call it in Polish the farma. And you see here my mother in the right picture with the glasses. And next to her is sitting the guide from the Gordonia, from the youth movement. And I will show you that she survived, and she was with my mother. My mother found her in Landsberg. So they were very close friends. You see here together, and you see the picture of the 5 girls in the pharma. The first on the left is my mother. And this is again a picture from the Ghetto Fighters House archive. Next, please. My mother survived 3 concentration camps. You see here the dates. In March 1940, she left the ghetto from Benjin in 41, and the first camp was Bobrek. And in Bobrek, you see here, Siemens had a line of production, and she was several days in Blechamer, and most of the time in concentration camp, she was in a camp by the name of Peterswaldau. This was a camp which related to Gross Rosen. Many camps were affiliated to other big camps, like Auschwitz had many affiliated camps. Kaufering had many camps near around Landsberg, and also Gross Rosen had sub-camps. So my mother was in Peterswaldau, a sub-camp of Gross Rosen. Next, please. And I found out in the last years that my mother underwent a medical experiment. She underwent an experiment in the Hygienische Institut der Waffen-SS Auschwitz. I studied what is the Hygienische Institute in Auschwitz, what type of hygiene was in the concentration camp in Auschwitz, and I found out that this was the infectious disease research performed by the Nazi doctors in Auschwitz. So I found my mother's name in the middle. You can see Zindorfella on the right side. And this, I learned by this form that she was infected by typhoid, by typhus. And she was very sick since ever. My mother died at age 59, being very sick since I know myself, and I remember my mother was always sick. Next, please. Now, my father was in 11 concentration camps, and I have, by the aid of Helga and others and Gerhard, I got all the forms and the dates, exact dates, and the names of the camps that he was. They used to transport them from each one to the other according to the needs of the Nazis. So among all of them, he was also in Gross Rosen, in Buchenwald, Bissingen, and several days in Dachau, and most probably he participated the death march to Allach, and he was liberated in Allach. Next. So my parents were liberated in the 9th of May, 1945. And each of them at that time realized first what is the loss. They understood first the loneliness, the despair, and the sorrow. And why only at this first day because for 5 years they were very busy to survive. But during the first day following the liberation, they could understand what really was the loss. And this causes them to say who I am, to realize that they don't know who they are and where are they going. Next. So they met in Landsberg, and very soon after they met, they got married. And again, I'm showing you the same picture. Please note the dress. My mother learned in concentration camp how to sew, and she used to sew the bride's gowns, the wedding gowns in Landsberg. And you can see many of her friends that during the wedding, they wore the same dress. And sometimes they gave each other the dress. So because they liked the dress, they liked the type of the sewing. And in many pictures, we see the same dress. Okay, next, please. You see here a picture from my parents' wedding in Landsberg. And you see that in the wedding, they don't have their parents or brothers, but by chance, my father found his sister. There were 7 children at home, only 2 survived. My father and my aunt, Zosha, which is next to him, on the right side of my father are my aunt and my uncle. And you know, he found my aunt, his sister, Zosha, in Landsberg. Somebody came to him and told him that in one of the trees in the forest, he saw a note. I am Zosha and I'm alive. So he looked for Zosha in many places around Landsberg. And one day he found her. She was in Straubing. And this is a very happy story that from all his brothers and sisters, he met his sister, which was the eldest sister. And there are other stories how family was, they met some people from the family. Like one of my mother's friend used to go in Landsberg. She told me herself, every morning she went to the train station. So I said, why did you go to the train station? She said, I was waiting for my brother. And one day he came and she met her brother. And this brother was one of the founders of the Ghetto Fighters House, kibbutz in Landsberg. Next, please. His name was Baruch Chita. And my parents always told me about Landsberg, that they were in a kibbutz. And I always heard the name Banativ. One day I asked my mother, what does it mean Banativ? I thought it's a word in Polish. And she told me, Hanale, Banativ in Hebrew means on the way, on the road. And she explained to me that they founded a kibbutz on the way to Israel. And that the kibbutz was the first step to go to Israel. They had a feeling by founding a kibbutz that they are already on the way to Israel, on the way home. And one day in 1918, when Karla first had this concert of liberation, this was my first visit to Landsberg. And I told the people in the theater when we first met in Landsberg, I told them that I mentioned that my parents were in a kibbutz by the name of Banativ in Landsberg. And Helga Dreiler, which is in the audience, approached me and she said, when you mentioned Banativ, I remember something, and I will look for it. The whole night she was sitting at home and looking, and the next morning, when the whole group, we were in the hotel for breakfast, she came in and she gave me this picture. And in the middle are my parents. My mother didn't know about this picture. And you see in the left, the second row in the left is Malka, her guide from Gordonia. You remember from the ghetto, from the farm in the ghetto. Many of those people became my family. The friendship in the P camp and before in the concentration camp, I think the friendship helped them to survive. This was a great reason and to survive, being together, the friends, and the friends were a substitute for the family that they have lost. The people, the next please, my mother's friends, my parents' friends from the kibbutz Banativ were my uncles and my aunts and my grandparents. They were everything. They used to visit us very often without even calling. They just came in, and I remember that my mother used to say, today we shall have guests from Landsberg. Next, please. And again, next. And you know that those people from Landsberg, they were the people that came to my wedding instead of my parents. They were the people that came to me to be with me in my daughter's bat mitzvah and before in my wedding. Here is the wedding of my aunt Zosha and my uncle Dolek, and next to them is my mother and two cousins that they found in Landsberg. So they found also family, not only friends. And when I visited Landsberg and also Feldafing, I went to Straubing, which is next to Munich, and I found the chuppah, next please, in the synagogue where the wedding took place in Straubing. So they found the chuppah with which my uncle and aunt got married in Straubing. Next, please. So I'm speaking about the friendship in Landsberg. This was something very special. And I'm showing you one of the pictures with my mother. You see, you cannot tell that it's not very close family. The friends substituted the lost family. Next, please. In the DP camp of Landsberg, they had so many activities besides the weddings. And then the children that were born, I'm also a product of Landsberg. I was not born in Landsberg, but I'm a product of Landsberg. And you see, they issued a Zeitung. They called it the Lager Zeitung. And in the Zeitung, you see here, they declare the founding of Banativ. Now, the language is Yiddish, but the letters are in German. Next, please. And they had also tasks in the camp. You see adopted children that were orphans. And you see here two boys that they adopted. And they also, one of the boys didn't know his name. So they gave him a name, and the name is Shimon Israeli. can we hear the music, please? Shimon Israeli started his career in Landsberg. He was a very famous singer in Israel. Actually, he was the first singer that was the only performer on the stage in Israel. He was very famous, and he started his career in Landsberg. You see in the middle, when they dance, the two boys that were adopted by the kibbutz, and they gave him the name. This is so meaningful. Next, please. My mother learned in a course that was given to the women of sewing. They had to be productive. When they go to Israel, they have to have a profession, to know what to do and how to work. So the women had sewing courses. And you see in the right picture is a picture of a sewing machine in front of a house in Saint-Otilien. So I believe that my mother worked in this house, and in the left, the very right person sewing on the machine is my mother. Next, please. Oh, I'm sorry that this picture is, one of the pictures is no good. But you see in the right, my father in a training course, which was given by soldiers, Jewish soldiers that were serving in the British Brigade. My father was very proud when he was holding this gown and when he got lessons from a chayal, a soldier, an Israeli soldier. They were so proud and so happy to meet the Jewish soldiers from the Jewish Brigade, to see it was written that they are from not Israel, but that they are Jewish, and they were so proud and happy to see it. And this is part of the training. As they are going to Israel, they need to know how to fight. Next, please. This is a registration card that was issued to everyone in Landsberg in the DP camp. And you see all the details where she was in camp. It's written Peterswaldau on the right. And note, please, on the first line in the right, it's written stateless. My parents, although they were, you see, well-dressed already, and they were smiling, and sometimes they were also going for trips around Landsberg, but at the end, they were stateless. They were refugees in Germany. But, you know, the P camp had a very special task for them. When the Americans came into Landsberg, they met the people from that survived the camps that were very sick. Most of them were very sick, and they started to give medical help, and they sent them even to hospitals. And I know that one of their friends was treated for tuberculosis. He was very sick in a sanatorium in Gauting. And in one of the trips recently, Gerhard and Heike from Landsberg took me to Gauting, and I saw it's still a hospital for pulmonary diseases. So the Americans had a big task. They issued those registration records, but also they found the housing for them. And this was not very easy. The houses were the SS bases, and not only, but they also gave villas from the German people in Landsberg in which they could live and spend this time, because some of them were in Landsberg for several years. Next, please. And what they were dreaming in Landsberg is to go home. In Landsberg, my mother was found by an uncle. Her mother's brother escaped from Poland several days before the Nazi came in town, and he survived and he came to the United States, and I found a form that is asking the Red Cross who survived from my family. And the Red Cross sent him a letter saying that the only surviving person from the family is Fela Zindorf. So he found her in Landsberg. He sent her an affidavit to come to the United States, but she decided to go to Israel. And they were singing Habaita by Shoshana Damari. Can you please start the song? So this is the original Habaita, which was sang by Shoshana Damari. And you see here, she's singing while showing pictures of the Bricha, how the people from the camps, from the DP camps, tried to get to Israel. And I'm speaking about the Bricha because my father, he stayed in Landsberg to work for the Bricha. He looked for children in convents, and he came to Israel with 2 children in his registration note. And you see here the ship. My mother got a certificate in Bergen-Belsen. You can imagine what an effort it was to go from Landsberg at that time to Bergen-Belsen, to the British area, to get the certificate, because she decided she's not going to the United States. She told me, in the Gola I was already. Now I'm going home, Habaita, to Israel. Next, please. And I want to tell you that since I remember myself, I think that the first words that I learned as a kid was katzet, lager, ghetto, and Landsberg, and Banativ. And I think that what Landsberg gave to my parents is hope and a new life. And I think that the state of Israel, as my parents told me, was established in Landsberg. The Nazis did not succeed to destroy our parents' wish to live and the strength to build a new and good future. And now I'm showing you the next generations. You see me, a little child, in my place where I live now in Tivon, in the first apartment, which was 1 room and a little kitchenette. And my parents were so happy. My mother came to Israel alone. My father still stayed to work in the Bricha in Germany. He came home in the age that I'm in the picture. He came to Israel. And I have a daughter, Tzufit. I have a brother. And I'm showing you the 4th generation, my 2 granddaughters. So you see what my parents have dreamt in Landsberg, it was fulfilled. The next, please. And I'm showing you now what Landsberg means to me in the last years. I was first in Landsberg in 2018, and this is the exhibition, I think the first exhibition after the Liberation concert that was built and designed by Karla Schönebeck. And I want to thank the people from Landsberg, Karla Schönebeck, Gerhard and Heike Rollenstock, and also Helga and her late husband Manfred for showing me and giving me the Landsberg in the last years. This is so meaningful for me. I wish I could tell my parents. Next, please. Because in Landsberg, out of the ashes, the Holocaust survivors underwent a process of revival, a resuscitation, and gave us new life in Israel. We have to learn from our parents how from the ashes we need to build a new life. And I hope that after the 7th of October, this will happen to our generation as well. Thank you. I think this is the last slide.
And thank you very much. Again, you can see that people are reacting with little emojis as well. I think that when we were preparing this program, it was important to also have, I say it's firsthand testimony to your situation, to your life, and to the story of your parents, and just how really important it is to have all these different stages in their journey remembered and documented. And I'm so glad to see that the Ghetto Fighters House is a part of that. And thank you again, Hannah, for sharing your story with us today. With that, which leads me to our final speaker, Noam Rachmalevich. Noam is a researcher at the Ghetto Fighters House archives. And he's going to give a short presentation on Kibbutz Lochamei HaGhettoot from Landsberg DP camp to Eretz Israel. And with that, like Hannah's parents, we're going to arrive finally to the land of Israel. So Noam, with that, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Medine, for the introduction. I would like to talk today about the Jews from Dror movement that were in a kibbutz in Landsberg DP camp, and later on they came to Eretz Israel, mandatory Palestine, and established Kibbutz Lochamei HaGhettoot, of which house you are seeing now, the Ghetto Fighters House Museum. After the war, after liberation, Auschwitz was liberated on January 45, and this picture that you can see is from April 45. The people that belong to the Jewish fighting organization, they joined together to commemorate the friends that were killed in the uprising and later on until liberation. This was the first step after liberation. As Yitzhak Zuckerman, Antek, the tall guy in the middle of the picture, said, he said that his hardest moment after liberation was finding out that he's without anything. He has no home, his relatives were murdered, and all of the world that he knew just collapsed. And he wondered what to do next. Yitzhak Zuckerman Antek, he was from Dror movement. He was a leading member of the Jewish fighting organization. When the uprising started, he was outside the ghetto, so he did not participate in the fighting, but he was very active in trying to help taking people out from the ghetto to the Aryan side and help them further on. Here you can see in the picture in the middle, Yitzhak Zuckerman, Antek. On the left, you can see Tuvia Bushikovsky. Behind him, Yosef Sak. And also you can see here Bronka Klibanska, who was a courier in Bialystok and Grodno. Like Yitzhak Zuckerman, there were many others, people that survived, who were members of youth movements, different youth movements. It could be Gordonia or Hachalutz or Dror, many Shomer Tzeir, many other movements. And they felt closer to the people either from the hometowns, like Częstochowa. On the right side, you can see mainly people from Częstochowa, and below you can see Dorka Bram, later on Dorka Sternberg from Kibbutz Lochamei Agitaot here. And they wondered what to do next. So one of the projects that they did was to unite, and they established a kibbutz, the first kibbutz in Warsaw after liberation. And what's unique in this kibbutz is this kibbutz was made from 3 different youth movements, from HaShomer HaTzair, Gordonia, and Dror. They did so because they felt much closer to each other after their uprising and during the hiding. And so they wanted to be with people that they trusted and shared the same ideology, socialistic, Zionistic ideology. And they made one kibbutz to prepare themselves to make Aliyah to go to Eretz Israel. But the movement in Eretz Israel objected. This movement said, the leading members of the movement in Eretz Israel said, no, you cannot establish a kibbutz from 3 different movements in Eretz Israel. Each kibbutz should consist of one movement. So after a couple of months, they had to split. They couldn't stay in one kibbutz together, and they continued their way west to the south. They couldn't stay in Poland anymore because of many things. First of all, they had no relatives anymore left. Most of them were killed. Poland was not a safe place. Poland, there was a big anti-Semitism in Poland. Many Jews were murdered right after the war, sometimes because of their property, sometimes because of hatred. So it was not a home anymore. They had to leave Poland. And then they started moving either to the south to get to the shores of Italy and France on the way to Eretz Israel, or westward to Germany, where there were some hundreds of DP camps that were populated by more and more refugees that came from the east, either from USSR or Lithuanian or Poland or all of the countries of Europe. And that's what they did. They didn't immigrate together, all of this group. They immigrated in small groups, sometimes 5 people, sometimes 10 people, and they came to different DP camps. One of the DP camps that they arrived to was Landsberg am Lech. Landsberg am Lech, it was a big DP camp in Bayern, in southern Germany, in the American zone. By the way, there were many DP camps in the British zone and in the American zone, but the conditions in the American zones were better. So we can see a kind of process that more and more people, refugees, move from the British zone to the American zone to improve their conditions. And in Landsberg DP camp, there were 8 kibbutzim. There were many people, hundreds and thousands of Jews living there. And the ones from that belonged to youth movements before the war or during the war, they joined together and into kibbutzim. And the kibbutzim served like a big family. They had no family left, so it was good for them to live together, to care for each other, to learn Hebrew together, do many things for each other. So there were 8 kibbutzim in Landsberg. One of them was kibbutz Lochamei Hagitaot. You can see the flag here, Ghetto Fighters. And this kibbutz was consisted of Dror members. They had a lot of time in Landsberg DP camp, and they filled it with many things. They went outside to the city, to the town from time to time, sometimes to black market. They had a lot of discussions, ideological discussions about the future, about socialism, about Eretz Israel, about the white book that the British did. And here you can see on the left a parade. I think it's a demonstration. It might be a demonstration against the white book that the British made some years ago, prohibiting Jews to go to Eretz Israel. In the middle picture, you can see members of Dror having a lunch together. It might be also a holiday, maybe Pesach, Passover, in the same year in 1946, right 1 year after liberation. And on the right photo, you can see several members of Dror with Yitzhak Antek Zuckerman. Yitzhak Zuckerman, the one that we've seen before, after the war, his wife, Sivia Lubetkin, she immigrated to Eretz Israel, and she came right away to Kibbutz Yegur, where she spoke of her experience during the war, and especially about the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. But Yitzhak Antek Zuckerman was asked by the leadership of the movement to stay some years longer in Europe. And like him, there were also dozens or hundreds of activists that were asked to do so in order to help the refugees to organize, to move later on, to make Aliyah to Eretz Israel. And we have a correspondence between him in Germany and Tzivia in Eretz Israel. They had a correspondence, and he says how much he's longing to go already to Eretz Israel, but he knows that this is a task that someone has to do, and he volunteers to do it. After a while that the refugees were in DP camps, in Landsberg, Feldafing, many other DP camps, their time came to leave the DP camps. Many, maybe most, left to other places like USA, Canada, Australia, South Africa, and many came to mandatory Palestine. The point was that to get to mandatory Palestine was a problem because of the White Book, because the British, they did not allow Jews to get to the shore without having a formal certificate, and most of them did not have. Here you see an example. This ship was called Latrun, and she had more than 275 passengers on board, which is much too much to her capacity. And this ship was arrested by the Brits in the port of Haifa, brought to the port of Haifa in November 46. By the way, it's the same date, 1st of November 46, that we've previously seen the parade of the Dror members in Landsberg. So the British, they stopped these ships, and they sent the passengers to exile to a camp in Cyprus for a period of time. It could be 3 months, it could be 1 year, somewhere more than 1 year in Cyprus in a detention camp. On the right picture, you can see both the passengers before being deported to Cyprus and British soldiers. And if you look carefully, you can see their berets. Their berets, this is the black-white photo, but these were in a red color. And because they had this red color berets, they were nicknamed by the locals, Jews here in Eretz Israel, anemone, kalaniot, which is a flower, wildflower that is very common here in Israel. In 1945, in 18th of January 45, a song was released by Shoshana Damari, a famous singer. She used to sing it, Kalaniot. Natan Alterman was the one that wrote the poem, and Moshe Vilensky composed the music. And right after it was released, it became a very common song in Israel because it was talking ironically about the British, that they are so common, and it was mocking them. And if I get back to Landsberg DP camp, the first concert, liberation concert in St. Ottilien in May 1945, one of the pieces that they sang and played together was Kalaniot, the song of Shoshana Damari, with the nicknames of the British soldiers. If I go back to the group Lochamei HaGetot from Landsberg DP camp, once they decided to leave Landsberg, they immigrated to Eretz Israel in order to establish a new kibbutz. But they couldn't do it right away. So first they split into 3 places. The members that later on would establish Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetot here in Israel, they were in 3 different places in Eretz Israel. One was Kibbutz Yagur. In the upper photo, you can see people from this group. They called themselves Lochamei HaGetaot group. The other group was in Kibbutz Beit Hashita in Emek Israel, and they called themselves Alonim. And the third group came to Kibbutz Ginosar, which is on the Sea of Galilee in the north, and they called themselves a kibbutz named after Mordechai Tenenbaum, one of the fighters. Here you can see, by the way, Yehuda Bronstein up there in the right picture with his wife on the left, Tzipora Fela. I would like to follow Kibbutz Ginosar because the people from Landsberg, they came to Kibbutz Ginosar, where there are people from other DP camps came to Bet Hashita and Yagur. So the group that came from Landsberg DP camp, they came to Kibbutz Ginosar for around 1 year, 1.5 years, and they started working in different places in the agriculture. They wanted to train themselves how to be productive, how to work in the fields, in orchards, in citrus, fishing in the Sea of Galilee, which is a hard work that they were not used to because most of the Jews in Poland did not work in agriculture. And what they also did, they wrote a diary. It was not very easy to be in Ginosar. Ginosar was a kibbutz that was built years before, and there were Israelis there in the kibbutz, and not always the relations between the locals and the newcomers was good. And in this diary that was written by Miriam Borochovich, later on Miriam Horowitz, later on Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetaot member, she describes what happened to them and also the longing to their friends that are still in Landsberg. And for example, she says, excuse us, our friends that are still in the exile in Landsberg. We are guilty for not having written a diary until now, but we will try to fix it. And then she sends her regards for the new year and so on. After a while in Kibbutz Ginosar and Kibbutz Yagur and Kibbutz Bet Hashita, all the members that were in these 3 different places joined together to one spot near the Carmel Mountain, not far away from Haifa, called Waldheim. What was Waldheim? Waldheim was a German, pure German settlement that was established in the end of the 19th century by Germans, religious Germans that immigrated to Palestine for religious reasons, and they lived here since the end of the 19th century. But during the war, in the 30s, they also had their Hitlerjugend, that they made marches with a swastika. We have many photos of them in our archive, the Ghetto Fighters House archive. And during the war, the British, they deported them to detention camp. So the Waldheim settlement was empty. These newcomers, these 3 groups of members that would establish Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetaot, they decided to stay to make the first months of training in the place called Waldheim, which was empty now. And there they started living together, these 3 groups, to get used to each other and to work together. On the left side, you can see women from this kibbutz, Lisa Herman and Shoshana Zeevi, giving food to children, not to their children, because as you know, in the kibbutz in the beginning, the children would not stay by their parents, but they used to stay in their children's houses, and other women would take care of. I jump forward, and on the right picture, you can see the date when the members left Waldheim, went several hours, and got to the point, to the place where Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetaot in Israel is located today, on the Western Galilee, close to the ancient Ottoman aqueduct. And all of the members, they made this immigration or this journey for a couple of months, but all of them have reached this place in April 1949. And in April 49, they made a ceremony to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust and the fighters. and the same day that they made this commemoration ceremony, they established a new kibbutz that would be called Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetot. And if you look carefully, you can see that the main speaker is Yitzhak Antek Zuckerman, one of the leading figures, as I said before, of the ghetto uprising of Warsaw. So a year has passed, another year has passed, and the kibbutz grew larger, and more people joined it. And they had fields, and they built their own houses by themselves. And we can see here some pictures from the kibbutz life. And another leap of time, this is a picture of this kibbutz today. The main house that you see in the middle of the picture, the Ghetto Fighters House, was established in 1958, a decade after the establishing of the kibbutz. And today, this is a very big kibbutz with a lot of children and people coming back to the kibbutz. And if I want to conclude, I think that the journey that these people did from Poland to the Landsberg DP camp and from Landsberg to Eretz Israel was completed in this kibbutz where we are now. So I wanted to thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Noam. But I have to say that if I think about Hannah's discussion about how important it was to have friends because they became family, that's really one of the things that you just showed us about creating the Ghetto Fighters Kibbutz, is that after being in Landsberg and also in other places around Europe, people needed family and they needed friends, and they stayed together and they found each other and created this new kibbutz to be an integral part of the new state of Israel. But more than that, they took on the responsibility of commemoration, remembrance, and Holocaust education till this day. And that's why we're here today, because we represent that institution. It's very late, and there were a few questions. Most of the questions actually got answers within the chat box, so I'm very happy. Thank you for our audience for doing that. I think the most important question was, how do I get more information about the names of survivors in DP camps? And with that, I want to invite anyone who wants to get more information to get in touch with the Ghetto Fighters House archives through our website, and we'll help you as much as we can, even if you may have information, or at least help you find the right location to find information about your family. And with that, I want to once again thank our speakers today. First of all, to Yigal Cohen, our CEO, and to Judith for being here and giving opening remarks. Of course, Mayor Baumgartl from Landsberg am Lech, that gave such inspirational words about commemoration. Karla Schönebeck, thank you so much for sharing with us the experience of the survivors that came to the DP camp in Landsberg, and how they found the strength to go on, to move on. And with that, we heard the personal story of Hannah as well, and with her parents not only survived, but were able to fall in love, which is a story that we all want to hear. Having a happy ending, coming to Israel and starting a family, and of course, fourth generation with Hannah's grandchildren. And thank you, Ronit, of course, for sharing so beautifully the experience of this collaboration that started 2.5 years ago with Landsberg. And I thank you all for enlightening me about the history of the Ghetto Fighters House, the founders of the kibbutz, and our deep connection to Landsberg. And I know that we're going to continue the connection for a long time. With that, I also want to thank our audience, especially those that were the children of survivors that were in Landsberg, but also other second generation that shared their stories in our chat box. And with that, I want to say shalom and wish everybody a peaceful day. Shalom.